afternoon. I'm Regan, this is Ben, and we're just here to talk to you today a little bit about backup as a service. So just before we get into backup as a service, I just want to take a quick look at what today's backup looks like. So this is today's backup strategy. Hopefully all of us in the room realize that one copy of our data it isn't enough. It doesn't have any redundancy, so we want a redundant backup. So to solve that, people come up with a plan. They call it the backup rule of three. Backup 3 copies of data. At least 2 of those have got to be on different media, and at least 1 of those needs to go off-site. And looking at these backups, they fall into a couple of categories. We've got our operational backups. These are typically on local storage. They're good for fast local restores, 7 days, 30 days, etc. And then we've got our off-site backups. These are really for legal, for compliance, for DR reasons. One of the problems that we have with tape today, with backup today, is that storage is quite expensive. Our storage is growing. It's growing exponentially. Some of the numbers that I've seen say that the growth rate of storage is between 50 to 90%. And to keep our local storage, growing at the same rate, it's very expensive. Also with that, if we're backing up to tape capacity, you can't just easily expand it. So that gets expensive as well, and operating it. The next problem we have is management across sites. So if we've got backup and we're managing it across our head office sites, our branch sites, that can get quite expensive too. And then our off-site backups. We need off-site backups, but taking them away, it's quite expensive. We need somebody to, take it on a bus or on a car to a facility. That costs money. So in New Zealand, there's also a bunch of businesses that are not that sophisticated, and they've got a slightly different method of backup. Let's call it the Robin method. So Robin's the business owner. Maybe she's the IT manager. Maybe she's a receptionist. Daily backup happens. Robin will take the tape, take an external disk drive, take it home, and hopefully, if she remembers, bring the next day's one the next day. There's some issues with that. If we think back to the volcano erupting before, I hope it's not going to happen here, but I mean it's a possibility. But there's Robin's house there, so you can imagine what the backups look like right now. What's even worse is that Robin's work is not that far away from Robin's house. So her office looks kind of similar. This is an imagined scenario, but I have seen instances in Auckland where flooding has occurred, and the house and the office are also flooded and problems ensued. We can't forget earthquakes and things that are happening as well that have created these issues. So what's the solution? Well, we like to think backup as a service, and specifically Azure backup. So there's 3 key takeaways I want you to have from this session. The first one is that Microsoft's backup as a service, it's a differentiated solution. There's a lot of solutions out there that are using cloud as part of their solution. Microsoft's backup as a service strategy is differentiated from some of those, and we'll see a little bit later on. It's also cost effective, and it can replace tape. So all of the costs that go with tape, we can potentially replace those with the cloud. And the last one is that it's actually for both private cloud and public cloud deployments. So we can look after your IaaS machines in the cloud as well. So some of the benefits of cloud in the strategy, kind of touched on a little bit before, but lower CapEx is the first one. Storage is expensive. If your storage is growing that fast, then you've got to grow your local storage that fast. If you want to keep an on-site backup, then you've got to double that. If you're doing tapes for your on-site, then you've got to upgrade or expand your tape capacities. With the cloud, we don't have that problem. We've got virtually unlimited scalable storage up there. No upgrades needed. Then we've got lower OpEx. So tape solutions, they're quite costly to manage. So are on-premises storage solutions. I don't want to do any SAN administrators out of a job, but a SAN administrator costs a lot, a backup operator costs a lot, a solution maintained across branches costs a lot. When we start looking at the cloud, we can take away some of those OpExes. And then lastly, replace tapes. We said it before, it's something I'm sure we'd all love to do. Now hopefully we can. So when we're looking at backup as a service, or backup in the cloud, I should say, one of the things is that architecture does actually matter. So there's 3 different ways that this is being achieved at the moment. We kind of class these into the good, the better, and the best methods. We don't really want to say that any cloud method is bad because it's good because it gets it out of your premises and cheaper, hopefully. So there are a few ones there. The first one we're going to look at is what we call our good. And this is quite simple. It's what a lot of vendors do. Basically, it's just adding cloud storage as a target for the backup. So it's putting there, instead of tape, instead of disk. It's nice and easy to do. You do save some money on the storage, etc. But there are some considerations. To back it all up into the cloud and then retrieve something, if your backup software is on premises and it's talking to the cloud, quite often you have to pull a full backup to retrieve that one file you needed from a couple of days ago. And that has some implications on network costs, etc. The second one we have is what we call better. It's slightly more evolved, and that is basically running your backup software in IaaS. So your backup software is running on a virtual machine in the cloud. The virtual machine, it's near the storage where you're saving your backups. So retrieving it is a lot better. It doesn't need to pull your whole backup down on premises to get the data out. And then you only need to send the recovered files across the network. So that saves you a bit on network costs there. It might cost you a bit more on network costs doing the backup in the first place. And then there's also the cost of IaaS compute, maybe $500 a month for a VM, etc. And ingress and egress traffic costs potentially as well. Then we have the third one, which is what we like to think is the best, and that is backup as a service. In this case here, Azure Backup is a first-class SaaS application. It's a multi-tenant service. It integrates with our DPM, System Center DPM product. It has all of the elements of the back end of it. These are running in Azure, so nothing to maintain in that sense. Because it's a service, you don't have to pay for the egress costs. You don't have to pay for storage transactions. And you get the backup, the space that you need for backup, you get that at cost for Azure storage cost. When we compare this to our second option, that IaaS one, this is kind of a look at it here. So there are a couple other limitations. In IaaS, in Azure, an A4 VM can take 16 disks. Each of those disks can be 1 terabyte in size. So you've effectively got a 16 terabyte limit that you can back up to using Azure IaaS solution. Azure Backup, that's unlimited. Just recently, they announced that you can use Azure Backup to back up a volume up to 54 terabytes, I think it is. There used to be some restrictions, but they're going away. Then the costs. So if you look at the cost of running the backup service itself, the IaaS costs there, you've got to pay for that in the IaaS model. There are no compute costs for Azure Backup. There's just a per instance cost for protected instances. And then the data transfer costs, and backup as a service, you don't pay for that data egress. If you're running it out of your own subscription and your cloud, you're probably going to pay for some data transfer costs for that. So, what would it look like? This is an example. Looking here, here's our head office. Maybe we're running System Center Data Protection Manager there. It could be protecting our VMs, our SQL, etc., up to the cloud. Maybe we've got some branch offices out there. Maybe these are individual Windows machines. They could also be backing up directly to Azure. All our backup storage sitting in the cloud. It's managed in one place, and it's just cleaner. So what we're going to do now is we're going to hand over to Ben, and Ben's just going to jump in and walk through some demos.
Yeah, no, thanks for this, guys. Appreciate your time. And I'm just going to walk through a few different scenarios today, so I'm going to do it throughout the presentation. Also do a bit of a comparison between some of the existing products. We have a bit of overlap, being the kind of company we are. We have our partners and we have our own products which overlap each other. So first thing I want to call attention to, if you've been into anything around, maybe a Store Simple presentation or Azure Site Recovery, we're talking about things like, storage, backup, DR with those products as well. So it's always a good level set for me to differentiate and explain where they actually work and where they don't work. So I put this together in about 5 minutes in Excel a couple of weeks back. And realistically, you start looking at the different solutions, and our Store Simple, which is an enterprise storage array sitting on premises, connecting to the cloud, backing up data, It's really there as primary storage, archival storage, and backup and DR for data residing on there. It's not going to protect your operating system, machine states, all that kind of stuff. It's just going to protect the data and store the data. It may not protect all the data too. You might have ERP systems running on fast important storage VDI, which don't work very well in that solution. Azure Site Recovery is all about DR. Is all about DR, and there's a big difference between DR and backup. DR is about your recovery times, recovery points. We can do bookmarks with things like ASR and roll back to certain points, but only for 24 hours. It's taking the state of the machine and doing that automated failover in DR, whether from site to site or from site to Azure. And one of our partners, James Knapp, did a presentation on planning for DR solutions yesterday, which is probably worth a look at. And finally, Azure Backup, where we're talking about not really caring about what the underlying platform it's running on, and protecting and backing up the actual data, the operating system state, and even images. And it can be used for DR. It can be used for things like migrating data to Azure. However, when you go and look at it, a lot of those processes are to be using it for migration of data or for maybe duplicating environments. It's really the standard, take a backup from disk and restore it somewhere else. It'll work, but it might be a little bit longer. It's not going to be the same recovery time objective that you want to try and achieve out of those solutions. So when we look at enterprise backup, and did you already do this, Regan?
No, it's a different slide.
Slightly different.
Slightly different.
And we talk about the value proposition with tape replacement because Regan mentioned before, tape's pretty cheap too. Tape's high density, LTO is great, but and all the studies out there talk about the management costs and management overhead. You have to go out, replace tape, pull every single tape back in and take it to the new media, or really what we all do is just hold on to the old hardware and software and hope it works in 6 years' time. And there's always, of course, the ongoing problem management and other issues we see across that. There's also issues around centralized management. So we're really trying to bring that down and centralize the management in some of the solutions and take the backup to Azure as that's at off-site location. We have multiple compliance level copies. We can start looking at the branch offices as well, or even endpoints. And I'll show you a few scenarios on this. We can do this through products like DPM and integrating with Azure. We can also do this via standalone Azure Backup agents. You can download and install this backup agent, which is about 36 megabytes, and configure it in about 5 minutes. Try it if you want before the end of the session. Regan might give you something. And you can download that, install it, configure it, and it will back up your files. It's not going to back up your OS state, but it will back up your data, your files and your folders, and take it directly to Azure, and you can restore that anywhere. We can do it all through DPM as well if you want a centralized managed solution. But for me, that's awesome because suddenly you go, I want to test the concept. We've got a few execs who, even though we tell them not to, they store everything in their My Documents or wherever it is. Put this on their machine, test it out. If it doesn't work, it's fine because you're just paid as you go, but give it a try. It's something worth looking at and worth investigating. And of course, Robin, forgetting to bring the tapes home is always bad too.
It is.
And then finally, we talked about the client protection, which I just went through already. And also then the backup of machines in Azure, and I'll go into a little bit more detail about why this is important, but there is a lot of the concepts where people think something's redundant. Wrongly. They think it's redundant, therefore it's being backed up. It's kind of different things. Availability and retention are very, very different. We can approach that, and we're doing a fair few things around that within Azure IaaS as well. So what I'm going to show you right now is a quick demo on how I'm protecting some stuff using Azure Backup on my machine. And then I want to get back to that data. I want to restore that data to a standalone server. I'm using a server just sitting up in Azure as my standalone machine with the Azure Backup agent and show you what the process is like to actually get that over. It's pretty simple. So my sample data today is some pretty contentious topics, flags.
Especially from an Australian.
From an Australian, I mean, my daughter can't tell the difference. It's like red star, white star, right? Some of the flags out there, I've got some personal favourites. I mean, come on. I actually, as an Australian, when we play in the rugby or something, or maybe a game we could win, I was going to say cricket, netball, this won't inspire fear, this would be great. And my actual daughter's favourite is this one. My wife's from Wellington, so she gets over here a bit and she likes a hokey pokey. But I'm using those as my backup example. So we can go into, this is the Azure Backup product here. When we install it, we download this actually installable, and we simply just put it in and we register it through the Azure portal. So scheduled backups on this are pretty easy. And you can see I've got 60 odd points in time here. We can go in, we decide what folders and files we want to back up. We can set up any exclusions, we can add specific folders, remove them. We put our schedule in place. We can do it up to 3 times a day. I've just got it running at 4 a.m. And then we select our retention. This is pretty cool. And you'll find this is actually standard whether we look at this as a standalone Azure Backup agent here, through Data Protection Manager, or through IaaS Azure Backup, where we can go days, weeks, months, and years. You can go up to 99 years of retention, which is pretty cool for your yearly backups. And then, of course, send a confirmation email once it's been completed and put that in place. It's already configured. We can also even go, and this is just on an end user device, and set up throttling too. And make sure we enable it only to go at certain times and utilize certain bandwidth during business hours. When's my work hours? Define them here. And out of work hours. And that backup can take place, and it's pretty easy to use. So I want to now go and recover those really important flags, particularly the hokey pokey one, to a machine here. This is just a standalone server, not even sitting in a VNet, but up in Azure. So the first thing I do is actually go and register my server here. And to do that, you'll go in and you'll get a Vault credential. I've already downloaded it. It's just a small file, which is good for about 3 days of registration. And this will register it into the backup vault, which is my Ben backup, Australia East. And put my...
So Ben,
yeah.
Did you use the GUI to get that file, or did you use the PowerShell command?
I use the GUI.
Okay.
Hey, we're keeping it easy, my friend. And then we put our actual passphrase for any encryption for backup doing here. So we'll encrypt it. You need the passphrase to get your data back. And it does actually make you save your passphrase somewhere. So if you do lose your data, you've got a copy of that. Go and store it somewhere. Don't forget it. And then go and register your machine. And once that's done, the next step from there is going to be quite simple. It's going to go and recover data. So I'm going to select recover data from another machine, another server. And it's the same certificate, so I'd still have to import the certificate. And we'll select it through here. We can see the other machines that are registered to the same backup vault, which is my laptop. And we can then go forward and go and take our data. So we'll browse for the files. It's pretty easy. Browse for the files. They're on which disk? There's only one. And select our items to recover, and then recover and restore our items. It'll take a couple of seconds here to actually populate that data through. And once that's through, we simply go in, it'll pull the data back down from Azure. We're not actually keeping a local repository of the data with the Azure Backup standalone agent. We are with something like DPM, but this is really focusing on just straight up to the cloud for off-siting of backups. You don't need any VPN, there's no special access, it's straight over the internet over HTTPS, going up to the Azure storage, up to the Azure Backup service. Common recovery points. And you can go back, select the day you want to get it from, and the data you want to recover. If I may. I'm not going to take my lab guide, but I will take my flags. Sorry, just a sheep and hokey pokey would be great. And then we just select where to restore it back to. So I'm just going to select just in the temp folder over here. Sorry, actually I'll put on the temp storage drive. And we're restoring our data back up to the cloud. The only thing we have to put in here, so we've got that certificate from the Azure portal, but we don't keep the encryption key in Azure, so you need to know those encryption keys. And hit restore, and our data is getting now restored back to that location I've selected. It'll take a little bit to go into the vault, find the data, and then transfer it straight back over. And that's pretty much the whole demo. Once that finishes up, so hopefully it finishes soon, we can just go straight in. We'll be able to see in our D drive and go and look at that volume. So we've seen our CVol already has been there. It's got the GUID of the volume, and it's slowly populating that information back here. And once it actually gets from Azure, the transfer is pretty quick, and we'll just get that data in.
So just looking at this, remembering that this is backup as a service, we're using the pane of glass on the client here. In this case, the Azure Backup, could be System Center DPM, but the cataloging and the recovery and all of those operations are actually happening in the cloud. So it's not bringing down data, cataloging them, sending it back up. It's all happening in the cloud.
Yeah, and if this was another machine in your data center, you wouldn't be paying for any of the data egress or anything else. It'd just be part of the cost included. And that's already finished. I now have my file back, my folder, and I can open my hokey pokey picture. Thank God. And that's pretty much the whole bit on the demo there. So I'm going to do a few more as we go forward. So when we talk about the hybrid cloud capabilities, I think you wanted to do this.
You jumped a bit further. Yeah. Cool.
Sorry, Radical.
So yeah, that was a quick demo on the recovering data, and it's nice and easy. One of the things we know though is that most of our data recoveries are done from that first kind of 7 to 30 days, or earlier, really. But we still need a plan for that long-term retention. And you know, the long-term retention is where it gets quite difficult. So at the moment, people are using tape for that. It does get expensive, and this is where we can use Azure, you know, as a plan for that long-term retention. So what's the benefit in doing that? Well, first of all, you get the, you know, inherently get the ability to have off-site backups because the data is off-site anyway. The next thing is, you know, we can use it for long-term retention. Data in Azure in the cloud it's nicely redundant. We can make it more redundant. It lasts for a lot longer than a lot of other media, so we can you know, set up, as Ben showed you, 99 years of retention. And if we're here in 99 years, I'm sure we could go and fetch it again without having to worry if the tape drive still works. And thirdly, as Ben showed you, you can recover that data anywhere. So that, that gives us a way to meet our business needs for protection of data, for legal and compliance, and that's, that's really why the cloud is quite good for that long-term retention. So, this is an excerpt from a Gartner study they did on TCO of backup on tape versus the cloud. And there's one thing you really kind of take away of this, and that's basically that most of the cost tied up with tape is really in the labour costs and the administrative costs, the tape vaulting service, etc. This is some Gartner studies. I had a crack at it, spent a little bit more than 5 minutes in Excel, and made this. So what you're seeing here, I'm looking at backing up a single hypervisor with a couple of cores. I've got 10 50 gig virtual machines on there. By the way, you'll be able to download these slides afterwards, so you don't have to take photos. I'm assuming it's a 2 CPU hypervisor, which goes into your software licensing, and I'm assuming a 50% compound annual data growth on this. So this table here kind of just shows you a little bit how that data growth goes over years. And then up the top, we've got a table that shows you a little bit about the costs based on tape. So at the start, we're pretty good. We've got a LTO5 3 terabyte tape cartridge. We're doing a GFS rotation, some monthly recovery point objectives there. There's a whole lot of cost to buy the media. I mean, they're not that bad. The media is quite cheap. But then, our data grows a bit. When we get to year 4, we can't fit that on the LTO5 anymore. So what are we going to do there? Options, we could upgrade to a as yet unreleased LTO8 tape, which I think I put in there. And that's going to come in, with some costs. So you install it, you've got to buy it, you've got to buy new media, probably migrate all that media as well. And then, the cost to run this tape thing, changing the tapes, cleaning the tapes, paying for the tape vaulting service, all of that adds up pretty quick. I haven't included some of the costs, and as I said, LTO8 doesn't exist yet.
It's on the roadmap, and 9 and 10 have been announced too.
Oh, yes, that's right.
For the future.
Yeah, so I've thrown some figures here. That's kind of where I get to there. And then I've thrown the table below as what I've calculated on Azure. It's probably a little bit on the light side. I probably need to leave a little bit more room for the data to handle the recovery point objectives, so that'll actually push that number up a little bit, but it won't take it to the same number as what we've got for tape up there. So what we're doing here is we've got 10 instances being protected per instance at the per instant cost. Then we've got the cost of the storage for a year for 2 terabytes in the first year, 3, then 4.5, then 6.75, and then 10.13. In both cases, I've got some backup software which is licensed for 2 sockets to run all the workloads as well. So from this, it's as I say, do your own math, because don't trust mine. It's not exhaustive, but it gives you a little bit of an idea of what you could see as the differences. But something I'm not showing here is the cost of recovering your data. And that's one of the other things where you really win. So if you need to recover some data that's older than that local storage, that 30 days, if you're using a tape service, then now you've got to rotate those tapes back in. You've got to catalog them on a machine, you've got to pull the data, make sure it's the right one, restore it, and the rest of it. When you do that with cloud, you can basically just pull that data from the cloud and have it there straight away. So not only is it going to be cheaper to pull that data out with no network costs, it's also going to be a lot faster than getting somebody to find the tape and drive in with it. So, there we go. There are a bunch of key capabilities for Azure around long-term retention. And one of those is the updated pricing model with the per instance stuff. There's some stuff around network and security that we just want to look at quickly. And then Ben will jump into a little bit more around the workload support. So when Azure Backup as a service first came out, the pricing model turned out was quite expensive, the way that they built it. So what they've now is they've realigned it to kind of how the industry charges for backup instead. And what that means is we've now got a cost per protected instance here. There's a cost for a small instance per month. Forgive me, these are in US dollars. I didn't get around to changing this slide. There's a medium instance and then large instances. So depending on how big the data is in your instance, you pay a per monthly of those. And then you pay for the data storage that your backup goes into separately. In this case here, you can choose locally redundant storage or globally redundant storage. The difference being, apart from cost, globally redundant, if you're using this
Geo-redundant, mate. Geo-redundant.
Geo-redundant, sorry. Geo-redundant, not globally redundant.
It's on Mars.
Well, you'd probably think it's globally because I'm going to say Australia. So yeah, GRS means that if you're using Azure in Australia, then you'll have 3 copies of your data at minimum in Sydney data centres, and you'll have another 3 copies of your data at minimum in the Melbourne data centres. So if somebody drops a nuke on Sydney, then you can just go down to Melbourne and restore your data.
What are you planning, man? Seriously. I'm a bit worried.
Nothing, I swear. So you might ask, what is a protected instance? And a lot of people have asked this. So if we're looking at that, a single Windows client is a protected instance, a single Windows server is a protected instance, a SQL server is a protected instance. So what you can do is you can back up a SQL server with a per instance cost, and then you can back up 1,000 databases that are running on that SQL server as well as part of that per instance. So the per instance plus the storage. So if your 1,000 databases was like 1,000 terabytes of storage, then you'd still have a 1,000 terabyte storage bill to pay as well. And then if we're looking at a Hyper-V machine, the Hyper-V hypervisor is not the instance, it's each of the virtual machines that run on that, the instance, or the SQL server inside it if that's how you're licensing it. And just note that if you do want to back up SQL, Exchange and SharePoint workloads, you do need the System Center DPM software to do it at that level. But it makes it much easier to price up the service than what it was anyway. There is a blog post around the changes to the pricing. Again, this will be on the deck. You can download afterwards if you need it. That's the blog post. There is, halfway down, there's quite a cool little bit there with some links. One of them is a Excel sheet that you can download. And that Excel sheet looks like this. You can pump in some numbers and some storage sizes, and it'll give you a rough calculation based on some daily churn, whether you're using LRS or GRS, and you want daily, weekly, monthly backup. It'll give you some costs as to what you're going to do. This was kind of comparing it with the older costings, so you can see here there's some price saving, but if you're comparing it to something else, that's not going to really help you. So let's just quickly have a look at what's happening at the networking side here. So we're running Azure Backup, we're running DPM, we're sending our backups up to the cloud. We do deltas up there. We have got the change tracking, we're not sending the whole lot every single time. So that's going to save you on bandwidth and bandwidth costs, etc. And on top of the deltas, then we've also got compression built into the product. I'm told that it's around an average of about 30 to 50% compression they get on that. So your change data set, then only half of that's really going to be your network bandwidth. Next, we've got the security aspect. Ben said before, we create that passphrase. It uses 26. That's not very good. It uses 256-bit encryption.
Asymmetrical.
AES, if you want to be precise. And it encrypts that on your premises with your passphrase before it sends it up to Azure. So it's encrypted in flight. I think it's double encrypted in flight because I think it goes over HTTPS as well. So it's encrypted in transit with a key that only you own. It's encrypted at rest in Azure with a key that only you own. So Microsoft can't go in and decode your data and look at it unless you give them the key. So where are we going next? Oh, that's right. Yeah. We can also, if we are using Azure in our organizations at the moment, if we already have Azure Express Route, then we can take advantage of the Azure Express Route MPLS network, which will give us guaranteed bandwidth, high throughput, and it means that we can reduce our backup times there and reduce our time to have our backups done as well. There's also an option if you don't have express routes of bandwidth. Maybe you've got low bandwidth, or maybe you've got really expensive bandwidth. There is the option to do an initial backup seeding as well. Oh yeah, there was a D there. That's cool. So what you can do here is you can run your backup. You can choose to initially seed it. You attach a SATA drive into the machine. You back up to that. You encrypt it with the Azure Import-Export service, which encrypts that drive. You put it on a courier to Microsoft. They plug it in the data center, and then they give it to you. You put in your codes, decrypt that data, and then it gets pushed straight into the Azure Backup Recovery Vault. You can also use that service for getting other data to Azure straight in your storage as well. But that means that you can get up and running with big workloads quite quickly without having to lean on the network for that. So I'm just going to hand back over to Ben now, and he's just going to talk a bit more about the workloads and some retention demo.
So the question, just for the sake of the recording, is if it's supported in the Australian data centre. I believe it is right now. If it's not, it's very, very imminent. So it's something you can use very soon.
Just to clarify, we're asking about the import-export service, not the, yeah.
Yeah, not the import, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, sorry, we'll have to check.
So I'm just going to quickly show you, I mean, you sort of saw it quickly in the Azure Backup standalone agent, the retention settings. And this is the same in whether you're backing it up through DPM, Azure Backup agent, or through Azure Backup inside of IaaS. All my environment is actually running up in Azure, so my encryption key kind of is stored in Azure at the same time, which is not, if you don't want to do it, you don't do it. But it just makes it much easier for me to set up this whole demo environment. Same kind of thing. When you do it in DPM, you get that centralized management solution, which is really, for most of us, what we want. We don't want to go and manage individual agents and encryption keys. It's going to be a bit of a nightmare. And you'll go through and you'll select your data protection method. You can see here you've got long-term, short-term protection, which is going to be disk. You'll generally have, 1.8 to 3 times the amount of capacity you might really have for your production storage for local disk storage. Make sure you can have that, few weeks, quick recovery. And then you can select online protection or tape. So when you select online protection, it takes away the tape option because, and also I've got no tape libraries, of course, being in Azure. And the online protection is all pretty easy to configure. You'll go and do your disk-based backup, where I'm taking a synchronization every 15 minutes and keeping 5 days of backup. We can then go and do our consistency checks when we want to, make sure the data is valid. And then we can select our cloud-based backup, our offline backup. So we can go daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, and we can take up to 2 per day. So I've got 9 a.m. and 9 p.m. per day. We then go and set up our retention, and as you saw before, it's the same retention schedule here. We can do days, weeks, months, and years, up to 99 years. And we can select which copy out of those backups we're keeping and for how long that retention is. And that's the whole process, and you go in and you set that up and you update your whole group to back up and do that retention. So you can actually do what you need to do from a legal and compliance perspective and do your enterprise style backup and centralized management. Some of the workloads that we do protect, and it's sort of always good to go, what works, what doesn't work. So we can do things like files, folders. Without using DPM, you can go and use the Azure Backup agent, 36 meg installable, get it working, configure it. That's great. We also can go and do things like our Exchange, our SQL servers, SharePoint integration. You can go and pull individual files out of SharePoint. I would have shown it to you. I didn't have the time to set up SharePoint properly. You can also go and back up your physical machines, your Windows servers, even VMware servers as well. We do have support for Linux today, which is a little bit limited, where we're only backing them up as virtual machines running on Hyper-V or inside of Azure. However, there will be further expansion going forward. Everything around what we're doing with Azure Backup, with DPM, is making it more enterprise grade. So little things like, that data set, that source data set, going from, a bit under 2 terabytes as a maximum, maybe the database or the volume, now to 54 terabytes, and that's just in the last few weeks. And the retention going from 60 days, which is not really that handy, up to 99 years. All these kind of changes are going to keep flowing through into the product. And I'm also going to show you here how we integrate in with some applications. I'm just going to use a SQL database, my DPM server, as an example of how we can recover data from within the application. I'm going to take that SQL database and restore it to another location. So I will take my my temp database here. We can select our recovery time and if it's on online or offline storage. So you can go to APM, you'll see online storage, so being Azure Backup, or we can use the local disk. I'll use online. And we can then select the database we want to restore and select recover. we get the option, and this is great, if you want to do things like a database refresh for dev test, UAT, confirm you can do a restore anytime, you can simply go and back it up, restore it to another machine or just to a network volume. So I'm actually going to take this database and restore it over to my SQL 2014 server when it populates the instance details. And again, it's nothing really that special. It's simply just what you're used to seeing when you're going and doing a restore of any backup. So we select where the MDB and the log files are going to be located as well. Which I'm going to get really recovery. There we go. Very, very imaginative. And we can do SAN recovery. We can do different notifications. We can send emails out when it's finished or completed. So your DBA goes, hey, can I get this recovered over here? You go, sure, let's do it. You'll get an email when it's finished, and you sort of can set and forget. And you can go and pull that back out and recover this data from Azure, off-site, or you can do it from local disk as well, and do this simply with the application integration, not have to go and restore a flat file, a BAK file, then restore it into your database. Same kind of things for things like Exchange or in SharePoint, pull out individual files from team sites and locations and get your information back nice and quick and easily. And that'll take a couple of minutes to kick off. We'll see when we get round to the next bit if I can show it to you. So yeah, that's pretty straightforward there, obviously doing your application integration and getting it all working. So really giving a recap of what we're seeing there from the hybrid capabilities of Azure Backup. We can restore anywhere, we can restore post-DR. We can keep these retentions, I like the word forever, brings up all kinds of evils, but for us 99 years is pretty much forever. And you can choose where it's going to be located, the redundancy of that work, of the actual data storage and how much you pay versus what your requirements are. And of course, there's a whole lot of workloads, and those workloads are only going to expand as we keep making the product more and more feature-rich and mature. And informational, just quickly here, we've got our SQL database job, by the way, is just completed. It's a very small database, but it's good to know and see how quick and easy that is. And we can do all those kind of things, 99 years. So is anyone doing much IaaS virtual machines at the moment? Anyone at all? Quite a few hands. It's probably the simplest way to start consuming cloud services. Common conversation I've had with a lot of people, particularly people not from infrastructure backgrounds, is around protecting them. They go, well, we don't need to protect them. Azure's redundant. I've got 3 copies on LRS. I've got multiple copies. But the thing is, you still want to have point-in-time backups. Even if they're test and dev, if a developer spent a month of effort working on a machine, that's not something they really want to lose. It may not be production, but it's going to be a lot of IP and a lot of effort and time they've lost by doing it. So protecting IaaS VMs is kind of important. Also, you want to be able to take those machines and restore them to other locations if you want. You might want to do dev and test on those machines. You might want to do restores just to make sure it works. And also have those same retention granularities that we see already with our traditional backup solutions. So we have this fully integrated in as a software as a service within Azure Backup. Quick call out here, this product still is in beta. We are adding more features in, but it is very, very imminent for a GA date, and it works very well today. Just in the last week, we've actually changed it. We only had a 30-day retention for virtual machines in Azure, and we've changed it to actually go and be 99 years as well. So you can do long-term retention to a different storage account in a different region than when your actual machines are. So you go in, you'll discover machines, and you'll register them within the Azure Backup service, which I've already done. You can see which ones are already protected here. I mean, I can also go and see any files and folders I'm using via DPM or the Azure Backup agent too.
Just, Ben, somebody had a question over here.
How do you guarantee the physical? Well, so the question is, how do you guarantee the physical location of the data? When you create an Azure Backup location, a vault, a recovery vault, you select the location of that storage. So same way when you provision a virtual machine, you might select Australia East, which is Sydney. And if you turn on geo-redundant storage, you know geo-redundant storage is only going to go to the partner region, which is Sydney and Melbourne. So these are actually guaranteed. If you look on the Azure Trust Center online, we have a whole heap of information about how we guarantee where your data is located. We don't choose or just move data. You're the only one who selects where your data gets placed. And we call it out very clearly. I mean, if you put data in Singapore and turn on GRS, it'll go to Hong Kong. If you put it in Amsterdam, it'll go to Dublin, vice versa. In Australia, it only replicates within that geography, so Sydney, Melbourne to each other, Australia East, Australia Southeast. We can see the protection status of our machines here, how many recovery points we have, and we can go and do our different policies around this as well. So this is actually using the VM agent, and we're able to go and set up frequency times, our retention, again, days, weeks, months, and years, if we wish. I've only got, I think, a month at the moment set up. And we can go and restore these to any other location. I wanted to show us doing it on an Oracle Enterprise Linux machine, because if you've seen the badges, Microsoft loves Linux. But also just to show the fact that at VM level we can back up and restore these machines. Big thing I like to call out here though, when we're talking about individual granular restore previously, this option is a whole VM image option. So it is only taking block level changes, but we've actually got to restore the whole machine, back up the machine image. If we want to get a file back, we will have to recover the machine to another location, which is pretty quick and easy, but still it's, it's a little bit more involved than some of the others. But for, again, considering you don't have to have any software configured or installed, you just run it as a service, it's a pretty good solution to have. We can go and select when we want to bring it back, restore, ignite, 99. Select if we want to create a new cloud service or be part of an existing one. Where do we want to put it? What storage account? I've only got one connected up to this service right now, but you can have multiples. Should it be on a VNet? And I'm going to put on my second VNet, which is obviously named. And, or would it be just a standalone machine? We can kick off that whole restore job, and we'll see the machine come through and be ready to go in a couple of minutes here. What I'm actually going to do is go over to a bit on my slide deck and come back over here in a minute when it's completed, which won't take too long. So looking at the way that actually does work in the back end, and we talk about what this is actually doing, the fact it's actually backing up these applications, making it easy to back up IaaS applications, not go and do any software. If you want to get application consistency, you can use DPM on Azure machines. You can back up Azure virtual machines the same way you'd back up virtual machines on premises. Protect files, folders, SQL databases. And we still want to protect against data loss, corruption, accidental deletion, create the new VMs and the copy. As I said before, the fact that Azure is fully redundant doesn't mean you are protecting against any of these failures. These can still happen. I mean, probably 90% in my experience, maybe more, of problems where people have lost data or corrupted data has been through human error, not through a technology set. We're the weak link, really. And it is pretty important to go and do it. I actually went too early, didn't I? I went too early in my backup demo. Damn it. Sorry about that, guys. I'm doing an intro now. That's weird.
This is your architecture slide.
Yeah, this is what I thought I was coming into. So when you do the architecture, it's working at a block level on the hypervisor itself, and we're taking in the initial full data set, and then after that, just to change data blocks as we go forward, and only taking incremental backups. Each backup is a full backup, but we store all the blocks in the same container, so we only keep single instances of the blocks, and we're pretty efficient about the way that goes on and how quickly and easily we can go up and protect that data. And my restore hasn't finished, Regan.
Isn't it?
I swear, it took a minute yesterday. Every time I try and I go and do this restore and test it out, it generally finishes just after I cut away. But
why don't you just jump in and show how you create a vault there?
Sorry?
Why don't you just jump in
and show how to create a vault. If you're trying to create an Azure backup vault, it's pretty easy. We've got a recovery services tab, and this covers this recovery services tab covers Azure Site Recovery, and it covers backup. So we select a backup vault, and we call it Regan Igniting. Don't know what, but yeah. And we can go and create that in the Australia East region. And that'll create that location. It's really that software as a service target, which we're doing really, really quick and easily. And this hopefully will be a bit quicker than my backup job. And we'll have this vault created now. We can go in, we can go, what are our steps? We can download the vault credentials. We can put it on the agent I mentioned, that 36 meg agent, to get it backing up for the files and folder level backup and protection. Or we can turn on protect and discover virtual machines. All the things we just showed you before. When it comes to the actual restore, we just kicked off before for my Oracle Enterprise Linux machine. I think it's now finished. So Ignite Azure VM. And we can go and see if our job's actually gone and completed here now. You can see it's restored that whole Oracle Enterprise Linux machine to another location, and it's been about 3 minutes. It's still not finished.
Still going, yeah.
Still going.
It's usually pretty fast.
It's a demo gods against me. especially with Oracle, where it's such a small footprint. Maybe I should have done Nano Server.
Yeah, Nano would have been cool.
But no, that's the whole process. It's a really, really easy process. I mean, for me, when I was setting up my whole demo environment in Azure, my most complicated parts was getting my Windows firewall configuration on my targets and some of my SharePoint and System Center properly installed and configured to the latest patch version. The Azure backup side of things I had done in about 15 minutes. So there is a lot going on with Azure backup too. I mean, from where it started to where it's going to now, where it's going to end up, there's been huge advances. I mean, I looked at the product years ago and went, this is not for an enterprise, this is a small business. And I can tell you now, like the guy who's running this group also runs a group for Azure Site Recovery, Store Simple, Azure Storage and Azure Backup. And he's got a lot of goals around making an enterprise grade. So, bring in things like 54 terabytes for the actual source side of the data, the long-term retention, and bringing all this stuff in, all the things we see coming up here. And there's going to be more coming forth in the very, very near future. I mean, there's already stuff where what I talked about is the most complex steps of setting up my environment, configuring System Center properly and going and putting that in place. You'll see some announcements, hopefully, in the coming months about how we're making that even simpler for things like Azure Backup, without saying any more. So I'm just going to hand back to Regan to talk about, feedback's not important, is it?
It is important, yeah.
Have you got prizes too?
I have got some there. So this is feedback not to us, but to the Azure Backup team. As Ben said, the guys running the group for Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup, they're very proactive. They work really well to bring in new features. They really want to hear your feedback. So if you want to, if you're going to start using this stuff and you find that there's something that's not working quite right for you, get in touch with us and we'll put you in charge with the product managers. They want that customer feedback in order to help bring that product and understand all the scenarios because they want to nail all the scenarios. There is a feedback site, and the one great thing about this feedback site is it gets a lot of use, and they do listen to it, and they do actually implement the stuff in the products. So you can see on the left there's a couple ones that are flagged as completed. One of them was the increase beyond the 1.6 terabytes per volume, so that's completed. Now we can back up 53 terabytes. But somebody goes and creates a feedback. Everybody else says, "Yep, me too, me too." And these guys, look at that and say, "Yep, everybody wants it. Let's go and build it." And they did this with Azure Site Recovery as well. It came out; it was DPM only. People said, "Well, why can't we do this straight from Hyper-V?" So a handful of votes went in there, and the guy said, "Okay, let's do it for Hyper-V too," and it happened. You see, there's a few things that they're working on at the moment there. We don't currently support backing up virtual machines that are using premium storage. Premium storage being the really fast SSD backed storage that gives you, your potential for 55,000 IOPS in a virtual machine. But it won't be long before that's lit up. There's a few other things they're working on behind the scenes as well. But if you do start using the product and there's something that's not there that you want, look at feedback there, get in touch with us, put you in the team, and I'm sure they'll be keen to talk to you.
Yeah.
So just having a look at the wrap up here. The three key takeaways we had here really is that Azure Backup as a Service, it provides you that differentiated one. It's not just cloud as a target for your backup storage. It does run a lot of that engineering in the cloud. It lets you restore your files and things without having to bring copies down and send it back up. It is cost effective. You can use it to replace your tape. You can use it on premises in your data centers. You can use it on your laptops. And you saw how quick and easy it was to create a backup vault. It's only a few more minutes to install that agent on your laptop and then have it start backing up directly to Azure. So yeah, backup as a service, and the fact that it is a service means that the continuous investment, that they're adding new features to this thing, they can roll it out when it is a service, and you get those without having to install a new version of, you may need for some of them a new agent version, but you certainly won't need to install all the back end and upgrade that. There's a few related sessions around. There's not many still to come. I think they've all gone now.
They've all happened.
But they are all up, or many of them are up on Channel 9 now. So you can check the check the Ignite website or go to Channel 9, log into some of those sessions. Ben mentioned the, is it on there, the site recovery one?
Yeah, there was the...
Oh, you haven't listed it there, have you?
I did. Did you change my deck?
No. There was one from James Knapp on site recovery, which went through using the site recovery part of it to protect VMware and Hyper-V. Did he do Hyper-V or did he just do VMware?
He was focusing on VMware. It was also, that was more around the focus on planning for a DR and some of the planning steps you have to do and some of the quantification. So it's more level 200, but aimed at why you would do things and what decision process you'd go through.
So the site recovery is one side of the whole story. The backup is another side of it. There are some other sessions there. Resources, sign up for the TechNet, MSDN, check out the Channel 9. Don't forget some evals and win stuff. And then if you happen to be in Auckland, visiting, the little volcano we saw at the start, it's actually from the museum. So go along to the museum and go into their volcano simulator room. They'll shake you about. You watch a video, you get blasted with sound. It's actually quite cool and worth visiting. So thanks to those guys for letting me use that image. So what are we going to do with these? I have some Azure backup as a service devices for your phones.
Battery backup.
So, little Azure logo as a battery. How are we going to get these out, Ben?
I don't know.
Has anybody actually installed and configured the backup on their laptop during the session? A credit card. You did try though.
Just give me your credit card. I'll make it happen. Okay.
Good stuff. You can actually sign up for a free trial of Azure, but it does ask for a credit card.
You back there, right?
Yeah.
Cool. That's why I don't play rugby anymore. Used to be a hooker, but it's no chance. That's why Australians are terrible at it. Yeah. With any questions too that anyone want to ask around the session, anything you want to dive into?
Yeah.
Here you go.
Cool. Yeah. Ask away.
Yeah, look, we've got a lot of partners out there, and they're doing a lot of mixed solutions around these technologies. I want to make a point: if I miss any, and they listen to this recording, it's just because I don't know, not because we don't care. But there are technologies like Seagate eVault will be backing up. They're really targeting things like devices and backing devices up to the cloud. They're doing that as a service and also as a install yourself. We've got Veeam as well. Veeam have I think they've got the most downloaded appliance in the marketplace at the moment.
That's right.
At least for enterprise customers, where you can download a Veeam virtual instance in Azure.
They've got a pretty comprehensive solution that backs up all the workloads. Yeah. And they use cloud as a storage as well, not backup as a service as such, but certainly they can target cloud for those backups.
I mean, you've got guys like Commvault doing the first and second scenario using. There you go, got the plug. Commvault, using cloud as a target and also running machines up in Azure to sort of do the second scenario, the better solution.
NetApp's here as well with AltaVault, which uses some cloud. It can connect to Azure. It can connect to other clouds as well for its backup.
But it shouldn't.
I know. I've seen Synology NAS also has an option to add a cloud target to that. Yeah. So if you're running a Synology NAS device in the thing,
quite a few people are going out with the AltaVault, which used to be owned by Riverbed, and that was it's a backup target device, which will then keep the local copy on disk and take data off to Azure, and that can be used with anyone who really can do a disk-based or OST-based backup target too.
So at this stage, they don't integrate with the backup vault, just the storage.
Yeah. And any other questions at all? Yes, over here. So what are the rules of deleting backups you've already got up there if you want to go and delete things out of your policy and retention?
Well, the retention policy itself will take care of expiring stuff that's gone past that retention. So I'm guessing that you're really saying I set up monthly recovery point objectives for 99 years. I'm 20 years in and I don't really need that. Or I haven't really looked into to see the mechanics of how we go and remove those recovery points. Maybe we can't. And if we can't, maybe you need to visit the feedback form and say we need to remove them. I'm not really sure the answer to that one.
Yeah, I think it's policy driven, like a lot of other products out there, where you can go in manually and do it. It's a bit more convoluted though. Generally do it based on the aging. You can go and kill the vault. Yep. The same way you can go to a storage array and put a shotgun through it. We do ask you, going, why do you want to delete it? You don't really want to delete it. Are you just done testing? What is it? But obviously that'd be down to your security and your access levels that you put in place to make sure people can't just go and delete a vault. Yeah.
Yep. Bloody good question. And
It has been done, but it's not guaranteed. So yeah, it's one of those things where it's again someone goes in and deletes a volume from a storage array. You could potentially with support get that data back, but
it's not part of the service. But if it happens, then do call. Data doesn't necessarily get wiped off straight away. It's not necessarily a problem because all your data is encrypted with your own passphrase. So even if it's kind of stagnant on a device before the device gets reclaimed or whatever, doesn't mean somebody can go and pick that and use that data up. So yeah, it may be recoverable. Hopefully it's recoverable, but it's going to take a support call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, over here. Not that I'm aware of, to be honest. I think there's a lot happening with Office 365 around backing up itself. It's not my area of expertise, but this product at the moment is not looking at O365 to the best of my knowledge. And I mean, I was speaking to the guy who heads up the whole team the other week, just last week, about a couple of things. And yeah, there's nothing that I'm aware of that he mentioned anyway.
Yeah. I do know some people in Auckland that have got a startup called Revert.io. What those guys are doing is they've actually got a backup as a service thing that'll plug into things like your Dropbox and some of the other personal stuff in the web, and they will do backup and long-term retention on some of those services for you. So there's some pretty cool stuff going on in the cloud about trying to back up some of those SaaS application scenarios. I'm not sure if those guys are trying to back up Office 365. They may be, and I'm not sure what our roadmap internally is for that either. There's some Office 365 guys around here. Maybe try and hit them up in the hub later and ask them.
In the watch it. Yeah, there's actually, through DPM, you've got consistency checks. So you can set up your schedules and when you set up your schedules here, you can actually put consistency checks as part of this. You could actually run one manually and perform a consistency check. Or you can put it to perform a consistency check once a day, once a week, and verify all the data is good and valid. And of course, then there's always, when you look at anything, when you set up yourself with your external auditors, for example, you'll have like a restore test sort of rotation where once a month you might confirm you can restore data from a week ago and a year ago or something. Yes? Sorry, say that again. When you use the Azure Backup Standalone Agent?
Yeah.
Well, it's not doing the consistency check. It is using VSS on the file level to back up the data, but it's not doing the post-consistency check. So it'll use VSS. You can do a test restore to confirm your consistency, but it's not doing it as part of the process. I mean, the DPM side of things, making it more enterprise and central managed. The Azure Backup Standalone Agent is really just a simple and quick way to go and back up, maybe remote offices or endpoints.
Yeah, and it only does files and folders, the backup agent. DPM does system restores and system protection and all the rest of it. No, I think it does block level changes.
It does block level changes at whatever you formatted the volume at.
Yeah.
And it uses VSS to quiesce and flush them up. It's lunch, mate, so no one else is in next.
Is that?
It's lunch after this.
Is it lunch? Oh, awesome. Any other questions there? If not, there's some little Azure stickers and stuff on the front here. You're welcome to help yourself too if you need them. Thanks for coming along. Thanks for coming to Ignite. Hopefully having a good session. One of the things that we didn't do on our slides was put up any of our contact details, but it's Ben from Australia. I'm Regan from New Zealand. You can find me on Twitter or on the internet and stuff. Yeah, NZ Regs and
Ben Dick.
BenDQ, is it?
Ben Dick.
Ben Dick.
BenDIQ.
Ben Dick. Yeah, or anybody at Microsoft, just ask them and get in touch with us and especially if you want to get in touch with those backup product managers and tell them what your scenarios are. So, thanks for coming along.
Thanks again, guys. Thanks a lot for coming.
Over there. Cheers.